Awareness, the final frontier. These are the explorations of Jonathan Robinson and Brian Tom O'Connor. Their continuing mission, to discover fresh new paths to the mystery within, to seek out new joys and new methods of awakening, to boldly go into the heart of expanded consciousness. This is Awareness Explorers.
Welcome, fellow explorers, to Awareness Explorers. I'm your co-host. I'm Jonathan Robinson. I'm with my trusty co-host who does almost everything.
Brian Tom O'Connor. I don't know if I do almost everything, but I do a lot.
Well, I'm grateful to you. You know, this is, we're recording this the day after Thanksgiving. So I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful for the topic that we're going to be talking about, which is control and surrender, and really getting in deep as to what surrender is as opposed to control. But thinking of Thanksgiving, besides being grateful to you, I'm grateful to our Patreon supporters who make this possible. And if you're listening, we can thank the Patreon supporters for doing everything to supply us with the resources to do this. Who signed up the last month, Brian?
Well, yeah, we'd certainly love to thank Steve Fulmer and Frank Ivans and B.B. Stokes and Walter Jaworski, Connie Smith, Julie McPherson. And if I pronounced any of your names incorrectly, my apologies, but many, many thanks.
Yeah, it really is sweet for us to get that support. And if you're inclined to get our blog or some free stuff, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Awareness Explorers. So besides thanks, we have thanks for being able to have an alternative to the world of control, which sometimes, I don't know about you, Brian, but I find that I cannot always control everything in the world. And that really used to bum me out. And then I learned about this thing called surrender. And I realized there's a second station. If I don't like station 1, station 2 is always available.
That's hilarious. Yes, you noticed that we can't control everything. What a surprise. But the funny thing is that basically our ego is made up of the idea that we can and should.
And the society or culture that we're in says that if you could only control more stuff, more people, more money, more power, then you would finally have lasting happiness. And that message is given to us about 1,000 times a day through advertisements. And it's hard to get beyond that message that the real only way to happiness is through contacting the heaven within, surrender, consciousness, awareness, whatever you want to call it, which is given to us about once every 10 years, other than on this podcast where we try to indoctrinate you as best as we can.
Well, I hope we're not indoctrinating anybody, but maybe inspiring them a little bit to look in the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's really dehypnotizing you and
like
me.
That.
And but that's a process. There was a lot of years of hypnosis, and it takes a little bit of time, a bunch of podcasts, a bunch of methods, a bunch of grace to wash that brain of its ideas that have been inundating us for sometimes many decades. But, you know, one of the things about surrender is the word. You know, we use the word surrender to mean total defeat. It's usually not put in the context of absolute joy, ecstasy, and love. It's a rather negative connotation in this culture. So although we use that word in spiritual circles, I'm wondering what other word we can come up with that might be a little bit more positive.
Well, letting go is the first phrase that comes to mind as a substitute for surrender. But either way, both of them, I think, are confusing. In other words, people really I don't think, grasp or understand what either surrender or letting go means.
Well, hopefully between us, we have one great mind and we'll come up with something. You know, my definition is allowing things to be as they are, which makes it sound almost funny because if things are as they are, you can either allow them to be as they are, or you can basically throw a tantrum and say, no, the universe does not know what it's doing, and it's my job to correct it, which obviously does not work so well because that's kind of what we're doing all the time is thinking, I need to correct the mistakes of the universe.
Right. We have this idea that somehow happiness is found through fixing ourselves, other people, or the world. And it may be counterintuitive, but it really isn't about any of that at all. But the tricky part is that when you talk about something like surrender, immediately the ego takes it on as its new job. Okay, now this is something I have to control. I have to make Brian or Jonathan surrender to what is. And the weird thing is that it can't do it. It's just not in its nature. It's not the right tool for the right job. The ego's job is to find what's wrong and fix it. In fact, that's more than its job. That's its definition. That's basically what it is, a thought pattern of trying to fix what's wrong. But the alternative is looking within and finding what's already surrendered, what's already okay with everything that is, what already allows all experience to be, and lets go of all experience, lets it come, lets it go. And that's the pure background of awareness, which is the theme of our whole podcast.
Yeah, you make it sound so easy. So playing the devil's advocate, as I often am, I'm getting paid a lot by the devil to be his or her advocate here.
You're on retainer?
Yes, daily. And there's a lot of, as you mentioned, you have the ego who's always trying to control stuff. So we need these baby steps to, well, first of all, in defense of control, let me say that there's good things about being able to control stuff. And Western society has really done incredible, great things. And our ego has done incredible, great things. You know, I now live in a nice house with heat and electricity and good health. And even though there's a pandemic, we're safe. And, you know, 100, 200, 300, 500 years ago, we didn't have any of that stuff. And life was brutal and difficult. So just like the two wings of a plane analogy that we often use, it is nice to be able to control stuff to the extent that we actually can. But in many areas of life, such as finding inner peace or love or connection with God, control is the enemy to being able to do those things. So we really need to strengthen that wing. And I'm reminded of times I've been in India where sometimes they're quite good at surrender and they haven't necessarily gotten good at the world of control. I'm talking about, you know, maybe the average Indian person who's poor. And I saw the limits of that. You know, there's a lot of poverty, a lot of disease, a lot of things that could easily be controlled, but they're not. I mean, the classic story for me was when I first flew into Delhi, the baggage handling thing, the conveyor belt to get bags out broke. And there were 300 people who were just waiting for that baggage to come out, which it never did. And nobody thought to do anything about it. And I asked an Indian man, will we be getting our bags? And he kind of shook his head and he said, we will see what God does. And I said, does this happen often? And he said, all the time. And I said, how long do you normally wait? And he said, sometimes an hour. One time it took 2 days. Mm-hmm. And I was appalled. Like, well, why don't we go and get our bags? And that thought never occurred to them, because for them, the thing to do is just to surrender to the situation. So I went and talked to the airport guy and said, hey, the thing's not working. Can I get my bag? And I got my bag. And as far as I know, those Indian people are still waiting at that conveyor belt.
Well, this is, I think, why surrender is such a complex or hard to understand issue, because a lot of people look upon surrender and think it means that they may not interfere with God's will or whatever's happening. But to me, that is excluding a huge portion of the picture. In other words, what's happening is, for instance, in your example, that the conveyor belt is broken. But also what's happening is that the bags are somewhere, that we are able-bodied people, that we can go to a different place and get the bags. So these are just all part of things that we accept. So when something arises, for instance, a difficulty in life, and there is the opportunity and the ability to do something about it, that's part of what arises and what needs to be accepted either. And sometimes that's difficult to surrender to, because sometimes the remedy requires great difficulty or sacrifice on your part. And sometimes that's what you have to surrender to. But the idea that you can do nothing is, to me, a kind of a misunderstanding.
Yeah. And sometimes, it goes back to that 12-step prayer of, God grant me you'll probably look it up while I say this and butcher it, but God grant me the power to control the things I can control, to not control the things I can't control, and the wisdom to know the difference.
I think it pretty much goes like this. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's certainly part of it. But it seems to me that surrender, even deeper than that, you have to ask, what are we surrendering? What are we letting go of? And
okay, those are good questions.
Yeah.
What are we surrendering? What are we letting go of?
We think we're letting go of attachment, and we think we're letting go of aversion, and we think we're letting go of the desire to fix or change things. But I think what we are really letting go of is ourself, our idea that we are somehow separate entities, that different, that there's us in here and that there's the world out there, because the us in here is the ego, which is designed to fix things. And that's what we let go of. We let go of our idea that somehow we are separate individuals, disconnected from the whole of the universe. And when we start to do that little shift in identity and think that, oh, well, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe we are the universe looking out through billions of individual eyes at the same time. And that when we look at the world from what sometimes is called the self, or the universal self, or universal consciousness, then we start to change our vibration. We start to change our relationship to the world. We start to vibrate in harmony with what's going on in the world. And then grace can happen, because we are vibrating in harmony with the universe, and things in some mysterious way seem to turn out better. But unfortunately, if you say, well, I'm going to surrender so that things can turn out better, the paradox is that doesn't work either.
You'll catch-22.
It's a catch-22. Can we, the individual egos, surrender? I'm not so sure we really can, because isn't deciding to surrender an act of control?
Yeah.
It's an amazing paradox. But I think the solution to the paradox is to hold them both at the same time and shift our place of experiencing, our center of experience in the world, from our individual minds to the background in which experience appears. And that background, as I mentioned earlier, is already surrendered.
I like that perspective, although it's a little bit of a jump for me sometimes. So I tend to like to break it down into smaller units.
Yeah.
So one way of looking at surrender is I ask myself this question: can I stop trying to control something of which I have no control over? Because that strikes me as like, well, duh. I mean, why am I trying to control this person who I don't have any control over? You know, I'm thinking about them, I'm saying that they're wrong, or I'm saying whatever. And that strikes me as like, well, that's a really big waste of energy. Or why am I trying to stop controlling a political person or situation that I also have no control over? So that helps me to sometimes see the futility of what I'm doing, and that can lead to surrender. And there's other aspects of surrender which help me, which is like, can I just surrender to things being as they are in this moment? So it's not like a big, I'm surrendering my life. You know, it's like, can I surrender to this person talking in this moment without me having to correct them in some way or judge them in some way? You know, so that's what I would call mini surrender or mini allowing. And like a muscle, I think if you can surrender to mini allowings of what's already happening, it can eventually lead to maybe letting go in general.
Well, I can wholeheartedly endorse those mini steps at surrender, because I think you're absolutely right. It's too overwhelming to surrender everything, or it can be. And I think that you're right in the first one. Notice just the simple act of noticing that you don't have control over a particular thing sometimes is enough to let go. I mean, if you know you have no control over it, then perhaps you can let go of the attempts to control it. But the second one that you mentioned is equally important. And if you hadn't mentioned it, I would have. And that's in this moment, because most of the time when we're asked to surrender and we find ourselves resistant to the idea of surrender, it's all about the future. It's, well, if I surrender, then I won't be able to do such and such. Or what if something bad happens? What if some occurrence happens? And it's all mind stuff. It's all future stuff. And it's not real. It's not reality. Reality is present. So I think it's very wise when you mention, just for now, in this moment, can I surrender? Can I let go?
Yeah. You know, sometimes I have an image of, I don't know if you've ever been on this ride at Disneyland or if they even have it, but it was a ride where you got into like a car and you would go around this path. And it was especially popular for kids because the kids would be the driver and it would have a wheel, but the car could not go more than a couple feet in either direction because there was a metal thing below the car that kept it on track, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So kids would be steering the car a little bit, but they could steer it like a foot in each direction before the wheels would catch on the track and mm-hmm. keep it going along a certain maze-like method. I'd always enjoy watching the kids look like they're, driving a car, when in reality, they're driving it hardly at all because they can't veer from the track. And I often think that that's a good analogy for what you and I are doing. It may look like we're controlling stuff, but reality is going in the direction that's going. And we might be able to lean left or lean right a little bit, but it's all just an illusion.
That's right. What a great analogy. Yeah, that's right. Just in the same way that in that ride, it creates an illusion that you are steering the car. You feel like you're steering it because you have a steering wheel and because it's going in different directions. And it's all all an illusion, and our lives are like that. It really is an illusion that we actually can control so many things. We think we can, and we try and put changes into effect, but in reality, things happen, and we're not really controlling most of it. And maybe we are, like in the ride, controlling a little bit of it, a foot here and a foot there, maybe, but even that can be argued by philosophers and neuroscientists. I won't get into that right now, but it reminds me of an awareness game, which is be the passenger. It's a simple game. It's just for a little bit, go through your life and imagine you're not the driver. You're the passenger to your experience. And you're riding in the car, and things are moving by you, scenery is moving by you, and turns are being made, and you're just riding. And it's just a fun analogy, very similar to what you were talking about, a way to sort of get the feel of letting go, the feel of surrender by imagining you're the passenger to your experience.
Yeah, I like that one. And there's so many advantages to surrender. I mean, really, well, there's disadvantages. If you take it too far, you can go into powerlessness or being overly passive, or say, something's God's will when you could change it. But I think it's really the only way that you can find inner peace is to get familiar with surrender, or even to find humility. One of the things I like about Byron Katie's work is, she has at the bottom of everything, kind of I don't know what's best, and that has helped me to surrender. Currently, I'm going through a situation where I have desperately tried to control in terms of a particular relationship that's important to me. And all my control efforts haven't worked very well. But sometimes what's helped me to just kind of relax is, well, I don't really know what's best. I don't know what's best for this person. I don't know what's best for me. And if I just kind of am a passenger to see what happens as we both tell the truth, then what should happen will happen, because the universe is doing a really good job of universing itself. And that puts me in a more humble position where I can feel more peace. It's not all up to me. It's up to me maybe to say what I want and what I feel, but it's not up to me as to what ultimately happens, or even that I would know what's best to happen. So I think this idea of not knowing what's best can be a real support to the ability to surrender gracefully.
That's right. Not knowing is one of the old phrases I remember at a very young age reading in a Buddhist book that I think they called it "Don't Know Mind." And that really struck me. That really struck me and stuck with me, because we really think we know and understand how things work, and we really don't. That's actually not reality. We live in a virtual reality of our mind and our ego's interpretation of things, which is always involved in memory of the past and imagination of the future, and hardly ever rooted in real reality, which is just simply life unfolding as it is right now, right here in the present moment.
Yeah, and the deeper you look into reality, you see that you really don't have control. I mean, like, we don't control our thoughts. They come out of the void. They do what they do. We can identify with them or not, but most of us identify with them. We have emotions that, if I had control over my thoughts and emotions, I'd have two very quick solutions. Mind, be quiet, and emotions, be in bliss.
Right. Yes, exactly.
And stay there.
Yeah, and stay there. Sure. If we could do those things, why don't we do them?
Because we don't have control.
Right, which is exactly why so many people have reported that spiritual awakenings happen after failures.
Yeah.
In other words, when they realize they've been meditating really hard and trying to attain a state and, with superhuman effort and failing. And usually it's the realization, oh my God, I give up. I can't do anything. And especially if they have a wise teacher that said, yes, now now you understand, you can't do anything.
Right.
They give up. They say, oh, I give up. I give up. And I've heard so many reports that in that giving up, which of course happens, you can't just decide to give up. You have to actually, I don't know why, but you have to really try, or at least you have to have an emotional intensity to it.
Mm-hmm.
When you finally let go and you finally let the balls drop and you finally allow grace to work as it does and the universe to go on universing, as you put it, then a deep sense of relaxation can happen. And that shift that we talk about from the ego, which is the attempt to fix, to awareness, which is the allowing of things, of all experience. And that's where happiness lives. It doesn't live in all the stuff you can fix. It's just, I don't know why it takes us so long to figure that out, but
the universe is pretty clear. We every time we suffer, it's basically a message that we're trying to control things that we can't. So the universe is doing its part in trying to wake us up with this suffering. And we have to learn to, I call it, trust the universe. And, maybe in Christianity, they call it faith. But for me, it's a matter of trust that either the universe knows what it's doing or the universe is going to do what it does anyways. So, trust it, especially in this now moment.
Yeah, I like the word trust better than faith, because faith has so many connotations that get confused with belief.
Yeah.
And when actual true faith is real deep faith, is the sense that either God or the universe or universal consciousness, whichever term you prefer, doesn't need my help.
I always thought it did, but I'm learning to trust that maybe it doesn't. And it's a process. It's it's a long road.
But this surrender thing, it's still tricky because, as I mentioned before, the mind still thinks it can do it. And I've spoken about this many times before, probably on the podcast and certainly in things I've written. One of the very early experiences I've had with that sort of, I call it the joy of being awareness, which is my translation for Sat Chit Ananda, being consciousness bliss, or that happiness for no reason. When I was listening to a talk by a spiritual teacher, and she was talking about her guru, H.W.O. Punja, known as Papaji, who said, what if just for one moment you had no intention?
Mm-hmm.
And I just burst out laughing. And at first the laughter was because seeing the paradox of isn't deciding to have no intention an intention. Mm-hmm. And so that sort of like short-circuited the mind a little bit. But then the second wave was a deep sense of relaxation. If I had no intention for this moment, if I let go of my strategies to make this moment any different from what it is, what happens? And it was my first taste, my first glimpse of all that we've been talking about. And all the subsequent glimpses after that were pretty much the same. They just got, maybe deeper and more frequent.
Yeah, you bring up one of my favorite techniques for tapping into surrender and awareness is what I call the quote technique of just for this moment, as best you can, have no preferences.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if there's a nail in your foot, you're going to have preferences. So, but in this moment, have no preferences over what I say. Have no preferences over how your body feels. Just have no preferences whatsoever about whatever feelings or thoughts show up. And that's like a freeway on-ramp to the freeway.
Yes.
And it's so simple. And obviously I can't do it if, that's something big, but so much of life is just, nothing's really going on. Okay, then let go and have no preference. Have no preference how fast the person in front of you is driving. Can you do that? They're going to drive either 30, 35, or 40. Have no preference as to which one it is.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's like Krishnamurti's famous quote. When asked to summarize his teaching, he said, "I don't mind what happens."
Uh-huh. And of course, we can't do that with everything, but maybe we can do it with something about the size of how fast the person in front of you is driving, or how long the person that's talking to you talks for.
Mm-hmm. But when you say that, of course, we can't do it with everything, and it's absolutely true. That's what scares people about it. And the idea that you have to do it with everything is just pure illusionary future virtual reality. It's just thought. It's just mist. It's not real. Because the only time you can do it is right now, and the only thing you can do it with is what's appearing right now.
Mm-hmm. I have a refrigerator magnet that I like that says, "However things are going, root for it to go that way."
I like that one. That's of course hard to do, but it's easier when you take your small mini versions of it to heart.
Yeah. Any last thoughts about control and surrender before we go into a meditation to help people experience that?
Yeah, I guess there was just one other thing which I was about to say, but now all of a sudden I forgot what it was.
Can you surrender it? Well, that's an experience, like you have something on the tip of your tongue and you're trying
That's right.
to get it, and that never helps. And then you let it go, and then voila, it shows up often.
I guess what it was, though, I remember, is that you don't only surrender to the things that are happening. You also surrender to the things that you're called upon to do about them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I already said this, but I just want to reiterate. So it's not just do nothing. It's, there's a nail in my foot. I must do something about it. I must get the nail out of my foot, or someone else is suffering. And to help alleviate their suffering, there's something I might have to sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also surrendering to what's happening, that you can actually affect a change that might be difficult, that you might not want to do, but that you're called upon to do, because when you see that we are all one, when that shift to universal awareness happens and you see that we're not separate beings, then love and compassion naturally comes in, and you make the choices that do help other people.
Yeah, you're surrendering in an active way rather than a passive way.
Right. But I still think the real surrender is the surrender of the idea that we are a separate being with the ability to fix the universe or our own experience. So I guess that's in a nutshell. But I really loved your technique that you mentioned. Just for this moment, how did you put it? I just want to reiterate that again.
Yeah. And, I would encourage our listeners to, when we talk about techniques, try them out until our next podcast. Let us know what you think of them. This technique really made a big difference, which is really the statement, just for now, can I have no preferences? Just for the next 20 seconds, can I relax with what is and have no preference? I'm not trying to push it or pull it. I'm just allowing it to be exactly as it is with no preference. And when you can tap into that, there's like an internal relaxation that happens that is very subtle, but you often don't realize that you've always been kind of shouting from the sidelines, let it go this way. No, that was a mistake. It should have been this way. There's always like that ego going on in the background, and you can just kind of quiet that manic ego by saying, well, for 20 seconds, just have no preference.
Right. Well, I think that's a great way to end before we dive into the guided meditation. So why don't you go ahead and lay it on us?
Sounds good. So if you can, try to let go of any distractions. Not necessary to close your eyes, but if you want, you'd be welcome to do that. What I'd like you to do to begin this meditation is to think of some person or situation that you're trying to control or have been trying to control in your life. It could be very recent or from the past. Just choose one person or situation and see if you can get into experiencing what it feels like to try to control this person or situation. As you think about trying to control it and making it different, or being dissatisfied with how it's going, notice what you experience in your body. Now see if you can just give whatever that is some space. So you're not even trying to control your reaction. You're just giving this now moment and maybe your feelings of contraction some space. Allow it to be however it is. Allow the feelings in your body to be however they are. Allow this person or situation to be exactly as they are. Have the feeling that you can trust the universe and that it's doing exactly what the universe or this person or situation should be doing. How do you know? Because it's happening. To help you to surrender, perhaps it can help to kind of give it back to the universe. Maybe you've been trying to control it. Just say, okay, you can have it back, God or consciousness or universe. It's yours. I'm no longer trying to control it. Allow yourself to just have the sense that you don't know what's best necessarily, and let it go just for right now. If you find that you're ego resists, allow that to happen. Imagine what it would be like to have no preferences as to whatever this person or situation represents for you. You could fully allow whatever happens to happen with no sense of trying to steer it in any particular direction. Notice how relaxing that could feel. Notice how peaceful that can feel. Just for this moment, you don't know it's best, so you have no preference as to how things unfold. Notice how that feels in your body. Notice how that feels in your awareness. And perhaps you notice that as you let go more and more to whatever shows up in this now moment, your identity shifts from the one who was trying to control to the one that's just aware, to the consciousness in the background that is always peaceful, always present, and always surrendered to what is. Allow yourself to enjoy the warm bath of surrendering to the universe. And as you think about your day or the situation that you are trying to control, just remember to take many moments of, just for right now, I'm going to let go and have no preferences. I'm going to allow what is to fully and completely be, and relax into my true nature. Enjoy. And when you're ready, if your eyes were closed, come back to the situation and physical surroundings you're in, and go about your day with these many moments of letting go to surrender.
Wow. That really gives new and deeper meaning to the term relaxation.
Good. I'm looking forward to listening to that one.
Yes, I thought that was perfect. Not just relaxation of the body and the physical relaxation, but relaxation of efforts, relaxation of ideas about what you must or can do, relaxation of your idea of yourself. Great.
Well, I think we covered what we needed to cover, and I really hope that some of the tools we talked about and ideas help people during this crazy, stressful time. We can't control the pandemic. We can't control politics, really. We can't control our thoughts, but you can, to some extent, control how much you surrender.
Maybe.
Or how much you let go of fighting everything.
Or how much you notice what's already surrendered.
Yes, that's another way of putting it. I like that way. So, any last comments, Brian?
Yes, just one. Yesterday was Thanksgiving, as Jonathan mentioned. Most of you will be listening to this probably 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, but I just want to say thank you to all our listeners for listening, because hearing from you and knowing that maybe in some small way it helps is something I'm very grateful for.
Me too. We really love your comments, and we thank you for the Patreon report, your nice words, and please pass it on to other people who can benefit and are probably having a hard time now. And that's a great gift you can give to others. So until next time, friends and family, keep exploring.
Keep exploring. Thank you for listening to Awareness Explorers. To learn more, you can check out our website at awarenessexplorers.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. We'd love it if you would post a review. And please share our link on Facebook and with family and friends, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself or someone you love.